surprise shone light from distant northern skies. At that point, I realized I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. This is all an illusion, and I'm willing to play.
Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, interviews with awakened masters as they share their quantum work with you. The Quantum Guide Show is produced by Karen Holton, creator of the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation, a free 9-step online course to give you the tips and resources you need to thrive. Karen lost and continues to keep off 178 pounds of surplus body weight as she made her dreams come true. Whether you are awakening to the ascension process or simply want a wiser, more efficient lifestyle, this program is for you. No strings attached. The Quantum Guide Show is brought to you in part by Zendome's Orgonite, Karen's unique brand of orgone generators, ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. Find out how orgone generators work and what they can do for you. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out Karen's current selection, only available from her website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Quantum Health Transformation. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 65, I am very happy to introduce you to our returning guest, Dan Willis. Dan is an ex-ABC newsman, as well as a top secret military witness that testified in Washington, D.C. regarding illegal secret government operations. And he experienced firsthand how the mainstream media is deceptively controlling the information, which controls the perceptions of the public towards an agenda that does not serve the best interests of the American public. Dan feels that it is his solemn duty to uphold his oath against this infiltration into the media and information systems that truly represents a domestic enemy to the constitutional republic of the United States, and alert his fellow citizens to this threat that is continuing to wage psychological warfare against U.S. citizens and needs to be fully recognized by all citizens that this represents a clear and present danger because they are the enemy of the people. Over several decades, citizens have been indoctrinated to hide this reality. And this is why it's important to know this untaught history in our education system of the control of our perceptions that have been formed by the mainstream media. Today, Dan is going to share with us more about the infiltration and control of our perceptions through the media, which he calls Weltanschauungskrieg, which is German for worldview warfare. And check out Dan's website, www.thewebmatrix.net, to learn more about the 70 plus years of guarded secrecy. Hi, Dan. How are you today?
Hey, Karen. Great to be with you again. One of my favorite subjects.
Oh, good.
Yes. Over 20 years ago, when I testified back here in 2001 with 20 top secret military witnesses that were disclosing illegal secret government operations, and the entire mainstream media was there. It was one of the largest events in the history of the National Press Club, 22 cameras in the back row. We were disclosing explosive testimonies that we've had faster than light craft, bases on the other side of the moon, 57 different species. President, CIA directors are illegally being denied access, that we've had zero-point energy devices that were willing to prove before an open congressional hearing, which each one of us stated after our testimony that we were willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing that we were seeking that was denied. The mainstream media, myself being an ex-ABC newsman, looking at the place was packed with reporters, 22 cameras in the back row, explosive testimonies. How could this not be a world-changing event? When I when I was witnessing this over 20 years ago, I didn't realize what Operation Mockingbird was. And as I started to research back through history, I found out that all 22 cameras back there, all the media, is all centrally controlled, and they do not let out to the public explosive information that would implicate the infiltration that have occurred going all the way back to the end of World War II, where the Nazis, who had effectively, they had a plan called Weltanschauungskrieg, which translates, as you said, to worldview warfare. What does that mean? They had a plan because they knew they were losing the war at the end. They had successfully escaped to Antarctica to set up their secret space program. While we felt we won the war, they had secretly planned to infiltrate into the United States, which they did through Operation Paperclip, which the education system was infiltrated with the Rockefellers to completely rewrite the history of what happened at the end of World War II, to hide the Nazi infiltration and escape. They brought over, thousands of Nazi spies into the OSS, which turned into the CIA. Later they were into NASA, into the heads of the pharmaceutical corporations. They basically controlled a matrix of perception, is what they called it, through all the mainstream media outlets, which they centrally controlled. In 1950 is when Operation Mockingbird, with Alan Dulles, who was infamous for the Nazi infiltration. And a lot of this history goes back to understanding, today, one thing that happened when all these witnesses that I joined back in 2001 testified is that it inspired a hacker in the UK, Gary McKinnon, who hacked into the Naval Space Command computers and discovered the secret space program that the US Navy has called Solar Warden. They were very upset that this information got leaked out. In fact, they wanted to put him away for 70 years in prison. This kind of goes into the history of how they were able to keep these secret space programs secret all this time from the public. Nazi Germany started with a secret space program in Antarctica. They had assistants, as Professor Hermann Oberth, who was Wernher von Braun's mentor, said that we had help from the people from other worlds. A race of Draco reptilians from the Sakaar Empire gave the Nazis a huge, there was under 2 miles of ice, there was these huge caverns that were worn by, Antarctica is one of the largest volcanic active places on the planet. And so they started building out their secret space program. They brought over thousands of slaves. Now, all this was hidden from the American public. With the Rockefeller Foundation controlling the education, with Alan Dulles, who started Operation Mockingbird, they started out with 400 journalists that the CIA paid the journalists in order to disseminate the information that they wanted. Hollywood as well, Project Dove. They started forming the idea of what extraterrestrial life was like, starting back in 1951 with The Day the Earth Stood Still. And then you have all the evil alien movies, going through history. And so they completely kept the public in this belief that we needed rockets, that NASA with Wernher von Braun and Walt Disney, talking about, going to the moon with rockets and all this, but they had already figured out the torsion physics of anti-gravity, going back to the Viral Society, or the German secret society that Maria Orsic gave the plans that were channeled through her in ancient Sumerian script to her father, who gave it to Professor Schumann, who was the discoverer of the Schumann resonance on Earth, who was perfect for understanding the physics in this, which he found viable physics, and they started working on it. And by 1934, Nazi Germany had achieved anti-gravity with their anti-gravity, flying saucers, so to speak. So while they were building out their secret space program down in Antarctica, the United States was, in the intelligence community, was well aware, because a single Navy spy was over in Germany and saw the anti-gravity craft. He jumped the chain of command, went directly to the Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, and James Forrestal set up a Navy spy program, which they had 29 Navy spies embedded into the Nazi secret space program, trying to get information. We were trying to catch up. They knew they had advanced technologies. In 1947, James Forrestal had Admiral Byrd go down with a complete military armada to take out the Nazi base down in Antarctica. He was met with flying saucers that came out of the ocean, and they completely wiped out his complete aircraft, all the aircraft, and they had to limp back, and everything was sworn to secrecy. And in July of 1952, the Antarctic Nazi craft were flying over the Capitol building and essentially intimidating the Truman and Eisenhower administration, because they had technological superiority due to the exchanges with this off-planet culture that was operating in Antarctica. And so there's laws in the universe that move toward balance, and because there is such a thing as a prime directive. Now, the Office of Naval Intelligence was working with Leslie Stevens, the creator of Outer Limits, whose father was Admiral Leslie Stevens, who was a contemporary with Admiral Rick Oboda, which was in charge of the Navy spy program, working with the Navy spies. And the Office of Naval Intelligence was in direct communication with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. They gave him the script for Gene Roddenberry for Star Trek to seed it into the populace mind with the concept of a prime directive, warp drives, teleportation, all these different ideas into the public's, to seed the public's imagination of what it would be like in the future. The thing is that the prime directive states that a higher evolved, and in other words, a race that has interplanetary travel, that has advanced, cannot interfere with a race that's still evolving. And so, because the prime directive was violated, in a sense, Because during the Eisenhower administration, they had a first contact meeting in February of 1954 with the Galactic Federation of Worlds that offered the world amazing healing technologies and assist us with our spiritual development, but it required that we relinquish our nuclear weapons. There was a conflict with that. And so what happened was Eisenhower wanted to have that agreement with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, but they warned us about the Nibu, which was the Greys from Orion that wanted to have a genetic hybrid program and abduct people in exchange. They would give us technology. And so what happened was Eisenhower, behind his back, MJ-12, circumvented that, and they gave consent to the Greys and the Draco in order to. And when you give consent, it's difficult for the Galactic Federation of Worlds to intervene because you're consenting. But it didn't really, the human race did not consent to that. This was done behind the back of the entire human race. So it's actually null and void. And so the Galactic Federation of Worlds came in and worked with the US Navy. And, going back to the 1940s, where they helped them build their own spacecraft. They started out in one, up in Utah. I'm trying to remember the mountain range, but they were building it underground. Now they build them out in space. But they essentially had like 8 huge battle cruisers that were like kilometers long, that are the Solar Warden program. The Solar Warden meaning they're protecting our solar system. So in 2014, there was a barrier put up around our solar system to block out the Sakaar Empire of the Dracos and the Nibu Greys. This was done, and then in last year, in 2021, the Galactic Federation of Worlds came in and they removed the Draco and the Greys and the deep underground military bases that they allow them to use, such as Area 51 and the Dulce base and so forth. And so they removed the extraterrestrial component out of our Earth, out of our solar system completely. This allowed the people of Earth, in order to deal with the human component that was working along with these nefarious regressive extraterrestrials. And so we have this element to deal with today that, from what I understand, there was a meeting in July of last year where near Jupiter, where the deep state, cabal, Illuminati, they have a lot of names. These people who essentially funded the Nazis and global elitists that control everything, that essentially want to move forward on a new world order, which would reduce the population dramatically, and the remaining population would be enslaved while they keep these advanced technologies. And you can imagine the technologies that they have in secret space programs are, with the med beds, you can age regress, add several hundred years onto your life. They have replicators, you can replicate anything. I mean, just incredible technology that people have seen in science fiction movies, but they're actually real. We've had many people who have been recruited into the secret space program start to come into total memory recall around the year 2000. because the Navy's solar warning program was able to launch back in the early 1980s. And so what they do is they, it's a stretch for some people, but they are able to take somebody around age of 17, recruit them, put them on a separate timeline for 20 years to do their service in space. And at the end of their 20 years of service duty, they're able to age regress and time regress back to the point of enlistment. So it's though nothing ever happened, and erase their memories. But as 20 years elapses on this timeline, they start to have total memory recall. One of the first witnesses was Michael Ralph, and then Randy Kramer, and then you have so many, Tony Rodriguez, and my newfound friend, Jean Charles, who was part of the French secret space program, who I'm doing a show after the show with him, interestingly enough. And these people have corroborating testimonies that are substantiated. Not only is the reality of the secret space program substantiated because of what Gary McKinnon discovered in the computer systems, but you have people like William Tompkins, who was a well-documented witness that revealed that. And so what does this mean to the human race? If this matrix of perception that the Nazis had planned, called Weltanschauungskrieg, they come into the United States and create this matrix of perception. So when you go through school, you just think, oh yeah, World War II, we won the war with the Nazis and everything like that. But you have no idea that they're controlling the media. Eisenhower planned to have public disclosure until he was circumvented in May of 1954. Instead, in May of 1954, they started the Bilderberg groups with former Nazi SS officer Prince Bernhard. And every year they have their meetings. And the Bilderberg group, along with the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, control the 6 corporations that control all the mainstream media. In fact, when I testified back here, all 22 cameras back there were controlled centrally. In fact, CBS wanted to do an interview with me one-on-one, and I saw what basically all the networks there made it sound as though we wanted to have a congressional hearing on simply the reality of UFOs, which isn't going to grab everybody's attention. So CBS wanted to do an interview. I said, I'm not going to do this interview unless I can say we have the scientists that are willing to go before an open congressional hearing and prove we have 0-point energy, and that we don't need nuclear, oil, and coal. They promised, absolutely, you can do this. They interviewed me for 45 minutes afterward. The producer, I never had this happen before. The higher executives, which are connected with the intelligence community, made her cut that part out. So the public has no idea. And when you're a child, you're with your parents are watching television. I used to watch the news with my father, watching Walter Cronkite, and our parents had no reason to question what is on the news and everything. And as you grow into adulthood, you just naturally take that assumption that, oh, there's hundreds of journalists out there that are vetting this information, and so nothing could be deceptive, with so many journalists out there. But then you understand the structure and control of the media, and how at the highest corporate levels, how they control this information. And so today, indeed, the mainstream media is the enemy of the people. They're using the media against the American public. They're putting out, a lot of people are aware of this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that it's a hard stretch for their mind to think that it's anything other than a baseless conspiracy theory.
Mhm.
And they, watch CNN, MSNBC, read the New York Times, and they just think, oh, and all the media is all agreeing on this information, and so, it must be correct. And these people, these crazy people, have alternative media outlets like you, Karen, are putting out disinformation, and so this is the history that the average person is just trying to survive on this planet and doesn't really have the time to research. I've researched for 2 decades, and it was like one oh my God after another. And it's like, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually fact. And the fact that we have we have an incredible global awakening we're on the threshold of. There are advanced cultures that have arrived in our solar system to watch the liberation of our planet. And they need to have a certain degree of, it's like a tipping point of a certain degree of mass awakening to this reality. It has to reach a certain critical mass that people realize, oh my God, we've been duped. And this group that's centrally controlling our perceptions through all these different, our education and the pharmaceutical corporations and everything, don't have our best interest in mind. In fact, they have the interest of a global elite that is very much in line with the Nazi New World Order plan. And when that becomes fully realized, there will be, like they had at the end of World War II, there'll be like Nuremberg-like trials for these people that are doing crimes against humanity. And all the people that have been abducted and used in these underground operations that at the end of World War II, they brought over Hitler's mastermind, Xavier Dorsch, that started in the Monsanto Mountains in New Mexico. And then they have like hundreds of these deep underground military bases. And people have no idea what's going on under there. And they're having a galactic slave trade, and they're using it for everything from pedophilia, adrenochrome, just slavery, you name it, all kinds of dark, nefarious things. And if the people became aware of this, they would not stand for it. And so all this needs to be exposed, and these crimes against humanity need to have justice brought and the planet liberated. And so we could have this incredible future and reveal the secret space program that's been operating out there for a long time. And we have dozens of witnesses that have been on board these craft and seen the technologies of the replicators and the med beds where they've had their arms or legs in combat against some of these regressive extraterrestrials that could be regenerated in a matter of hours, or arm or leg, or age reversed. And so just imagine the kind of world that we could have if these technologies were released. But they have purposely, through the Invention Secrecy Act 1951, anybody that has anti-gravity, free energy, or across the board discoveries, medical, you name it, they get what's called a national security order. I have 10 years experience meeting with scientists and inventors around the planet that have received these orders. And so they keep the planet technologically hijacked, you could say. and using this worldview warfare against the minds of the public. And the truth and the facts are out there for those who, intuitively sense it and start to see the glitches in the matrix, so to speak. And once you start to research a little bit and you start to say, oh my God, look at this, and this is credible. Like, say, you have the head of the Israeli space program talking about a galactic federation and that there's bases on Mars working with joint extraterrestrials. You have highly credible people that have come out. And if you follow those leads, you'll go down the one oh my God path after another and realize that then you become, and then it's important because we are all connected through a morphogenic field, through a collective consciousness. And the more of us become awake, the more of us become awake. And it's so important for the transformation on Earth to realize that the human race has been duped, and that we need to claim the future that's been withheld from us.
Wow. Yes, it's so interesting and unbelievable. And I like you, I was raised on, Walter Cronkite and everything he said. We absolutely believed it. I'm in Canada, but we've been heavily influenced by the United States and the American media. And I was born in the mid-50s. So I remember, we were really, really indoctrinated to believe external sources of information, the news, the doctor, the priest, the politician, and that these people all had our best interests at heart. And no, it's not true at all. In fact, from my perspective, when I look back at American history and Canadian history and just the end of World War II and post World War II, I don't see the what they call the Third Reich. I don't see it as actually disappearing. It seems to have just kind of been subdued or hidden for a while, and now it seems to have come full circle with everything that's going on today with the World Economic Forum, that it's the same program. It's almost exactly the same. And so I wanted to ask you, Dan, what do you think their end game is? We know there's a lot of horrible stuff going on. There's going to be there already is a huge loss of life that's being hidden by controlling the media. But what's their end game, do you think?
Well, the things we can't talk about the things going in Iran and so forth. Their plan is to reduce about 90% of the population and to essentially have a complete police state where they control everything you see and do, so that you're basically at their call and beckon to do whatever they want, to build things. They need people. But they don't need, 8 billion people. They need a small slave force that's manageable. There's too many people on the planet to be manageable. And so that's their plan. But the plan's going to fail because there's this, thanks to the internet and shows like yours and people who are inquiring, starting to catch on. And there's way more of us than there is of them. And so, their plan is to have, they have access to all these advanced technologies that could extend your life and travel through the stars, and they want to withhold that from humanity. They don't want humanity to have that. And it's pretty obvious. We're running internal combustion engines, running gasoline and dangerous nuclear power plants and coal, to burn. It's like these are primitive primitive, dangerous, polluting technologies, and we haven't needed them. And there's many, as I said, I met with scientists and inventors for 10 years vetting these technologies. There's the stuff they have in the secret space program is way, way advanced. And you can imagine exchanges with cultures that are thousands or millions of years in advance. They're way beyond, scientists on Earth or, backyard inventors, which I've met with. But there's a lot of brilliant minds on Earth that come up with solutions, but they get nipped in the bud, and they can't, and some of them meet with worse than that, in order to keep the status quo of using the dangerous, obsolete technologies that have been forced upon Earth in order to keep us at a certain level of technological evolution.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Now, I'm just wondering. Now, I'm not going to call them the elites, because to me that's part of that whole inversion where they use words that mean the opposite. So I'm going to call them the parasite class.
Yeah, there you go.
So the parasite class, I understand that they want to reduce the Earth's population, and I understand that they want to keep all those technologies to themselves, and they want us to be completely ignorant of those technologies.
Right.
And that's part of the mind control and the information control and the education system. But I'm wondering, do you think they plan to use those technologies themselves? Or, because it's my understanding that there's a bit of a quarantine, because if humans took their evil ways, and I'm talking about the parasite class and the way they've been doing business for at least the last 100 years, and actually, if people go to your website, they're going to learn it's a lot older than even the last couple of 100 years. But I'm just wondering, it makes sense to me that advanced civilizations that are benevolent would not want that infection being spread to other star systems. And I'm wondering what your take is on that, Dan.
Well, interesting. I'm in this show I'm doing with Jean Charles, and Alex Geyer is going to join, which they discovered that the Andromedas, who he was getting communication from, have temporal technology that they could view in 350 years into the future, and they saw a galactic-wide tyranny, and they were able to isolate that down to our little solar system and right down to Earth, Moon, and Mars area. And so in order to circumvent that, it's kind of a temporal wars going on. So we're currently, from what I understand, we're on a I know it doesn't look like it if you watch the evening news, but we're on a positive timeline, and that we have now. They're not, as Elena Danaan has made it clear many times, who is getting direct communication from the Galactic Federation of Worlds, not channeled, but through a communication device. That they're not here to save us. They're here to assist us in saving ourselves. And so that's what they're basically hanging out in our solar system, to watch the human race, what they do with the situation, because we have to basically save ourselves. And how that occurs is through, from what I'm seeing, is disclosure. And that's the only reason I get out and do public talks like I'm doing with you, is that although it's like preaching to the choir, people who, are pretty savvy and aware of all this, it's putting it out there to many minds, is that we have to disclose these things, because so long as we're in this matrix of perception, this worldview warfare, and we're unaware, they can do what they can do because they have secrecy. See, their power is secrecy. the parasites. And our power is disclosure. So as we disclose this information, and people become aware that this is not some science fiction, fantasy, made up, baseless conspiracy theory. This is based on fact. And the fact that the secret space program is real, and that the US Navy has been working with that, and that there's a long history that a lot of people on Earth have no idea that has happened. If people understand that, understand the world, that because there is far more of us than there is of them, we're not going to tolerate it. We're not going to allow these human rights abuses that they're doing, enslaving people. That's why I'm feeling encouraged about the Artemis Accords and so forth, where they've been using slave labor in space for some time, from what I understand. So this is not right. This is not the this is not the spiritual level the human race wants to operate, is having people enslaved. We have the technology that's been hidden to liberate all of mankind, and there's not a problem with they justify it thinking, oh, in order to keep it in balance, we need to get down to 500 million people on the planet. Well, if we have the technology, there's plenty of places to relocate on this planet. And in fact, if we have all the technologies, there's plenty of planets that we can send people to. So we don't have to do these dark, nefarious things to the human race in that vein. So it's a spiritual warfare. It's a light against the dark, and the light is winning, but it's they're putting up a big fight toward the end.
Well, there's a race for time, because I'm kind of a big fan of Bill Wood from the Project Looking Glass. And is that right? Project Looking Glass, where
Correct.
he went into the future, and he saw that the mass awakening will actually happen. And it's not the end of the world, it's the end of the parasite class's free ride, not for us. And so it seems to me like the overall agenda is to get rid of as many humans as possible to try to slow down or stop that awakening process. But it's happening. I mean, Rainer Fulmich from Germany and Europe, they have a grand jury trial. Wow. And the more they dig up, the more they got more to expose and deal with. There's a grand jury that's already formed in the United States. There's one being formed in Canada. And so what's happening is people are waking up. And waking up is a pretty icky process. I don't know about you, but I'm not saying that I'm the most enlightened person in the world, but every rabbit hole I go down is just like, wow, mind blown, mind blown, mind blown. But then it sort of shakes up my reality spiritually, my health, my social connections. Everything changes. And then, like what you said earlier, it also can be likened to that 100th monkey thing, where when enough people get it, that the whole thing just shifts, huge shifts. And then the parasite class no longer has their power over us. Would you agree with some of that, Dan, or what's your take on it?
Oh, totally. And the people you mentioned are heroes. Coming forth and calling out these people doing crimes against humanity. Dr. David Martin has all the evidence, the proof against these people. The thing is they very cleverly put their people into high positions. And so when you try to get something done legally or medically or whatever, they have these different regulatory agencies that they that is supposed to look after the interests of the people, they put their people in place. And so, and as the United States has, our current government, and so, and this is becoming more and more evident as they reveal themselves by their actions, and which is great in a way, because although it's horrible with the things that they do, but it's getting the people who have been going along with, everything they watch on MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, all these different outlets that form their perceptions. All of a sudden, they're having these different little glitches in the reality that's making a lot of them start to question a little bit. And that little bit of questioning is the crack in the Pandora's box, that once they start to see what the full truth is and get out of the perception matrix that they have been, and it's not their fault. It's very well polished. Billions of dollars go into think tanks that engineer your perception and to get your consent to move forward on their centrally controlled agenda.
Yep, I would agree 100%. And I mean, it's sort of like the best amazing time to be alive, and kind of the worst, depending on what you're doing with your life. But I'm sorry to say this, but we're quickly running out of time, Dan. It's a fascinating subject. I can't encourage people enough to go to your website. We've got about 3 to 5 minutes left. Dan, do you have a message for the audience, for the viewers? What would you like to say before we go?
To do like I did back in 20 years ago, is research. I challenge you to validate this. I mean, I looked at all the witness testimonies and all the documents. It's too much to say this is a conspiracy theory when you research and you find out it all validates this reality. A media company out of Hollywood wanted me to write an article on, it's not a professional site, but I started, in order to understand this for myself, I did a chronology from the year 1900 to present day, and started plugging in all these witness testimonies and all these authenticated, classified, leaked documents. And it's it's very long. If you go through it all, it starts to connect the dots and put the picture together of the hidden picture that we weren't taught in school. And the webmatrix.net, it's not a professional site, it's just my online notes to share with other researchers that are seeing the glitches in the matrix. And let's just let's just hope this bleeds over through the 100th monkey morphogenic field into those minds, and that they start to see the glitches, and they start to realize that, oh my God, we've been duped, and there is a very nefarious agenda behind the perception matrix that is leading toward their agenda, which is not in the interest of the people of Earth.
I would agree with you 100%. So as I mentioned, I will put your website below on the actual video. I'm giving away my age again, but they will. But the link will also be in the description below. So I really recommend everybody check out Dan's website, the work that he's done. He's organized it beautifully. He's got lots of pictures. It's very interesting to go through the material and illustrations and pictures. And I think you'll really get a lot out of it, and share it with your friends. And I guess that's about it for today. I want to thank you very much, Dan Willis, for being on the Quantum Guide Show. Always a pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you next week for the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye.
Always a pleasure, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to Karen's YouTube channel, click the like button, and share this show with your friends. Check out Karen's website at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. All the links are available in the description box below. Until the next time, keep up the good work.
Endlessness puts all my inner strife to rest. For time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less. And the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul, I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all in me,